This interview with Steve Hackett is brought to you by Make a Difference with Records. We are a vinyl charity store based in Godalming, and we support the Surrey mental health charity Catalyst. Look out for our other podcasts, and you can follow us on Instagram under Make a Difference with Records or on Twitter at Vinyl for Charity. In this part, we ask Steve about some of his favourite music. We ask him to nominate 3 albums for inclusion in the Catalyst Virtual Vinyl Vault. And then we end up by asking him that all-important question: what is his vinyl answer? So Steve, we now come to part 2 of That's My Vinyl Answer, and this is very much about you and your loves of music and your first encounters with music. So on that note, Steve, what was your very first album you bought?
Ravel's Bolero.
Okay.
As a kid. I managed to get it. And funnily enough, I got that album back as well, because I'd sold it to a school friend, and he kept it for decades, and he gave it back to me.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I had to sell it in those days because I needed money to buy an instrument.
Okay.
Guitars, and I was...
So classical music was very much an influence early on then. It wasn't something that came to you later.
Yes, it was. And I first heard Ravel's Bolero. It was one of these BBC plays, and at one point they had the music on, and there was going to be a murder in the room, and for some reason there was always this Dance of Death thing associated with that piece of music. I thought,
okay.
It's a very strange piece of music, but I like it. And I was drawn to the dark side very early on.
There's a bit of that in your music, isn't there?
There is a bit of the dark side.
Let's not go there now, because we could be here a long time.
We won't go to all the dark corners in the music. Yeah.
And what about first single?
Well, the first single was Man of Mystery by the Shadows.
Okay.
Yes, not a million miles away from Devil's Cathedral. Again, a similar sort of descending minor sequence. And
I'd never have made that connection.
It's funny, isn't it? But, it's not. I don't think I would ever get sued, but I told Hank Marvin when I met him that his was the first record I ever bought, and he was very self-effacing, very nice man.
Wow,
and,
okay.
I still love the Shadows.
Bolero and the Shadows.
Yep.
If we then expand the time horizon a little bit, we've all probably got one album that we go back to, that we gravitate towards.
Yeah.
So we pick it out from our record collection and we think we must play that again.
Yes.
What's that album for you?
Oh, there are a few.
I might allow you more than
am
one.
I allowed more
if
than
you
one?
behave.
All right. Well, in that case, let's see. I loved the Stones' first album with Route 66, which has still got one of the best. Keith, I'm sorry, mate. It's your best guitar solo. It's on that. It's that solo, all double notes. Oh yeah, boy. And so loved that. As a more evolved album, I think Revolver, I think is rather wonderful, because the Beatles were turning away from the boy meets girl and etc. for all the various reasons. I think perhaps Dylan's influence. The music was growing up, it was evolving. The incorporation of other instruments, of knocking on the door, nudging at world music, classical music, downing their tools, allowing others to take over, the maturity that's required there, so that the guys weren't having to be their own heroes all the time. So I love that for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you have 3. It's just 2.
Fine.
Just 2.
Fine.
One of the great things about vinyl, and you remember the days when you kind of go down to the shop and you're waiting for that new album to come out, and you look at the artwork and you open the album up.
Yeah.
One of the questions we ask people is favourite album cover, where you feel the artwork does something special, either on its own or in the context of the album. What would you pick as your favourite cover?
Favourite cover? Oh my goodness me.
It's a harder one, this one, isn't it?
Yes, Yes, I'm very fond of Supertramp's "A Crisis, What Crisis?"
Oh, okay.
As an ecological statement. In fact, I mean, it speaks volumes. I think. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Um,
Not an expected answer, but you did say only one.
I did say only one, but I did let you have two earlier.
You did. You
I
did.
did. It's
Yes.
a trade off, this, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you're in your spaceship that you refer to in your book,
Yeah.
and you can go anywhere you want in time, place.
Yes.
Which artist would you want to most collaborate with?
Oh my God. Oh.
Who would get the juices flowing?
Well, you know, a lot of people would say Bach but then I don't know whether I'd have the ability to keep up. Frankly, I'm not sure that anyone does, but because no one has ever been that brilliant before or since. But Paul Butterfield on harmonica, I'll resign harmonica duties, let him do it as long as I'm on blues guitar.
That'd be a great combination. But you say about Bach, I mean, he's probably not very quick on the guitar. He's probably a bit faster on the piano, isn't he? So
Yeah, probably a bit faster on the organ or the harpsichord, but he's an absolute whiz with the chords.
yeah.
And you know, Bach music is just something extraordinary. I did an album called Tribute.
You did indeed,
which
yeah.
had six
Yeah.
pieces of Bach on,
Yeah.
and it practically put me in traction just to get my hands around that stuff in
Bach-
increments. But there we are.
Bach revisited.
Bach revisited.
There you go.
Oh, but it's all a revisit for Bach, isn't it? Because you just add a footnote to the glories that Segovia has managed and all the rest. Yeah,
So
wonderful music.
So Steve, you're still in your spaceship now.
Still in my spaceship, always. Usually.
What concert would you want to have seen? Would you pay to see?
Oh.
There's an era in time, maybe something you didn't see that you wish you'd seen, or something you'd want to see again.
Well, if I could take friends with me, I've often spoken about seeing King Crimson at the Marquee in 1969, and I saw several concerts. But I always want people to see the power of it. You know, the power and.
Were you there for that one, or was that one you missed? The 69.
No, I was there for several of the 69 shows.
Okay.
And I do believe I've got an album that's got that on because it came out much later, and because I befriended, I'd spent time with Robert, and I'd more time with Ian.
Yeah.
In fact, funny enough, Jacko Jackson is supposed to be just sending me the film that they've done, the documentary that I gather features both Ian and Robert talking about each other, as far as I know, and both being very emotional, as far as I can see about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that was a great moment in time, and I would want people to see that one. And there's one other concert that I would want people to see if I'm allowed to.
Go on then.
And that was, it was Paul Butterfield playing at Eel Pie Island to about 20 people, but it was absolutely killer. Wonderful, because he had, two wonderful guitarists.
Mm-hmm.
Only one left now, because Paul has passed on, and Mike Bloomfield, who worked massively with Bob Dylan. So all these revisits you see of Bob Dylan, and if you hear any great guitar work, it's usually Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop, who was also very good that night. So 3 lead instrumentalists wailing away, and God, I had to leave that gig early. I can't believe I had to leave early in the middle of East-West.
Well, if you were in your spaceship, you could go back and see
the whole gig. Yeah,
whole gig.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and take a lot of people with me, and and say, check these guys out.
Well, it's a shared experience, isn't it? A concert.
Yes, I think so. As we were saying earlier, that thing about iPods and people going for a run and listening to their music, and then they have a shower, and then they put it where the towel is and forget about it. But somehow music is a shared experience as far as I'm concerned, and I think that was achieved mightily at Hammersmith the other night, where I felt there was no passing of time. that in terms of the spirit, everybody seemed to be on the same page at the same time.
100%.
100% in the same room. There was 100% feeling there.
Well, having been lucky enough to be there, I can
Yeah.
vouch that. And of course,
It was great.
yeah, we'd all heard Supper's Ready played a few times, Horizons, of course. But
Yes.
hearing, Timetable, Get 'Em Out by Friday. Timetable was magical.
Well, it's such a lovely song, and I didn't realise how lovely it was until I relearnt it, and we did it live, and I thought, yeah, and it was all very well observed. Everyone had pretty much the same sounds that we had for that, and I thought,
Beautiful.
this sounds lovely.
This is where we're very nice to you. So you can choose 3 albums now. So
Right, okay.
so we've come up with this idea. Again, make a difference with records. We partnered with Catalyst, the mental health charity, and we came up with this idea called a virtual vinyl vault. And basically, the idea of it is to ask musicians to nominate 3 albums that, in the context of how people use music, whether it's a form of escapism
Yes.
or reflection,
Yes.
or whatever it might be, what 3 albums do you think might be really good albums to go into that kind of virtual vinyl vault?
Well, it depends on your own personal taste, and I'll try and answer quickly. All the sonic developments that happened within electric guitar happened really around about 1966, where guitars learned to sustain and scream and do all those things that guitarists are still doing now, next century. And so the John Mayall with Eric Clapton, John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton album is absolutely seminal for all rock guitarists of any distinction that I've ever worked with or talked to. They all point to that one and say, it's Eric's finest hour, this is something that it charted at the time.
Yeah.
Blues was very important at that time because it was, it was the not just the old stamping ground, but the proving ground for so much of what was to follow. This is pre-heavy metal, and yet you see the roots so much within that. So that was seminal for so many of us. And if I talk to Brian May, he said the same thing. Steve Howe said the same thing.
Oh, right.
So 3 of us, 3 British guitarists say, yeah, we think that's Eric's finest hour, and isn't that wonderful, etc., etc., etc.
So that's one. What's
That's
your second?
I think it probably has to be Sergeant Pepper, because you have the mixture of so many styles. Vaudeville meets rock and roll. Yes, somehow, yes, it's the British seaside meets, I don't know, America. Sorry, I'm answering so.
It's a difficult.
I'm looking for.
It's a difficult one
because
to
it
describe,
spans
isn't
a very wide arc. All of that, there's some of New Delhi in there as well. It's not just any old album of that.
I mean, some things are very difficult to describe.
Yes, crafted as if it were a live album. Everyone knows that it isn't a live album, but it might as well be because they had the world's ear and all the manpower in the world. They only needed to snap their fingers, and anyone would have worked with them at that time. And so I think that they cast a very wide net over available musicians at that time, and the beginnings of world music, prototype, progressive music, all of that. And
okay, so the third and final choice, what would that be?
Final one. That's more difficult. And it's like, who do you leave out? You're leaving out everything. I loved In the Court of the Crimson King for its breadth in the same way, and I said that to Ian MacDonald. I told him that it was up there with Sergeant Pepper for me, and he said, oh well, I think he came to realise that the band that he walked away from when he was so very young, was the blueprint for so much that followed. And everyone, the 2 of them have now gone. Greg. I only met Greg once, and he shook my hand very, very warmly for a very long time. And that's only happened with one other person, and that was with Richie Havens.
Oh, okay.
Where we shook hands, and it was very warmly for a very long time. which told me that we should do something together. I didn't ever have a chance to do anything with Greg, but would have loved to.
But Richie was on, is it Please Don't Touch?
He was on Please Don't Touch, and I worked on something of his, which I've never ever heard back. But
oh, okay.
Yeah, I think truly wonderful singer and wonderful guy.
Yes, yeah.
Wonderful, the embodiment of everything, of, you know, the peace movement, civil rights, black and white audience, just, you know, everything coming together in one man, another Hendrix, another brother.
Yeah.
Like, bit like working with God, really. And God turning to me for approval from time to time, saying, "Was that all right? Shit, was that all right?" God, you know, it's...
Wow.
You know, sometimes that happens. You write a song. It was like working with Bonnie Tyler. I'd written Prize Fighters.
Is this what came out on Feedback?
Yes, it did, yeah.
Feedback 86.
And from the very first note, you hear her singing. Oh, God, she's breaking your heart, you know.
Mm. The voice is an instrument.
Oh, the voice is an instrument. And as Richie Haven said, the most beautiful instrument in the world is the human voice. And I said to him at the time, your voice, maybe, not mine. Not at the time, no. I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it.
You hadn't heard your Gold Top by then, obviously.
Maybe not. Yeah, you know, it's we all do something that the other can't quite do. But we loved his rhythm playing too. Phil liked that very self-effacing man. He said, "Yeah, I've been scratching around for years, scratching away for years."
So we now come to the final and most important question, perhaps, Steve and Joe, which is when we ask you to think about all the albums you've done, whether it's as part of Genesis or in your solo career, and say to us which one means the most to you in the context of our own charity, which is around the mental health side. So, Steve, what have you chosen as your final answer?
Well, I've chosen Surrender of Silence, which is an album we did in lockdown, and it's had lots of input from Joe here and lots of suggestions, and I'm very proud of the writing that we did together on it. Of course, it's got the band as well, but you know, it's got a lot of the two of us, the social comment stuff and many things like Natalia, which was driven by Joe, which is the flagship track as far as I'm concerned, and the lyrics were really hers. So why did you choose that Russian theme?
Well, the strange thing was it was before everything that's happened in these recent months. But I was thinking about how Russia has never had a democratic thing. You know, it's always been repression of the people. And so I said to Steve, maybe we could do something, you know, that encompasses that whole of the last 1,000 years of Russia with an every woman who comes back at different times. And we thought, well, let's try for it. And I wrote the basic lyrics, but you wrote several of the lyrics as well.
No, I don't think I did. I think what I did was just tried to get them so that the meter would work. So essentially, they're Joe's. She's not quite taking enough credit for that. And until I thought the best way to do this would be to do it in a Prokofiev style. In other words, we got three composers here. We've got Prokofiev, Tchaikovsky, little nods to them in it, and a bit of Stravinsky thrown in if you stretch the imagination a bit. But
incredibly cleverly put together as well by Roger King.
Very much, yes, yeah. And
orchestrated and created this marvellous sound.
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, we had ideas, and it was really the team of the three of us that put that together. And I'm very proud of that one because it seems to be apropos very much at the moment. So it's a subtle form of protest song.
The other one, of course, was the last one, the environmental one.
Scorched Earth?
Yes. That again, we felt was a really important message because of the terrible environmental situation we're in today. So, and we felt that to do something that was poignant rather than overtly angry, something that had a poignancy which would touch people's hearts was a good idea for that one.
I mean, it seems, looking at the more recent albums, a lot of those tracks have really come out of either kind of personal shared experiences, either as a couple and or travel, and then of course you've got the social issues. How much does the travel come into play on this? Because this album effectively covers quite a wide part of the globe, but at a time when people weren't really able to travel particularly.
Well, indeed, but then we drew on our own travels. We'd been to Ethiopia, for instance, and Joe again suggested
that had the influence, didn't it?
Is that where Wing Beats came from then?
Yeah. Again, the kind of film for the ear factor came into it, and indeed some of these have been turned into videos, and there's one more that's turned into a video, and I'm trying to remember what the title of it was now, but there we go. The other one is Fox's Tango.
Yeah.
Fox's Tango was a cross between all sorts of things. I wanted it to be very full on and very heavy and very slow, and it was about personal experiences that I'd had on the streets of New York, and just the idea of inequality in the world, where it seemed to me, the migrant question and camps and the amount of refugees that are drowning on a daily basis or being locked up, it seemed to me that in the end we're just going to end up with one massive prison camp that is one half of the world, and the keys are going to be held by the other half of the world, and it'll be that bad. And I don't know.
So there were several that had concerns, weren't there? I mean, and at the same time, there were also, Shanghai to Samarkand was one where we were drawing on our memories of our travels as well.
Yes.
So it was part social observations and comment, and part that sort of sense of the wonder of the world. So we feel it's very important to celebrate what's wonderful about the world as well, and all sorts of elements came into Shanghai to Samarkand because we've experienced a lot of the East, China, Japan, Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, and all that side of things, and I've experienced the Himalayas with Nepal, and we've also experienced a lot of the Middle East, and we thought, what a fascinating idea to create a musical journey which goes from China over the Himalayas and on to Samarkand. So that was an interesting one to do.
Yeah, well, we got hold of, I think it was a music shop that was closing. Got hold of an instrument called the Dine Shine, which is a Vietnamese instrument, it's a sort of oriental harp, and I had it in here, and I was tuning the thing up, and we used 2 takes actually of the thing side by side. Which gives it a sort of lushness, which is part of its appeal. So it's I think it sounds very nice. It's very beautiful. I love it. And there's this wonderful viola solo from Christine Townsend, which I think
exquisite.
describes the East wonderfully, with those sighing sort of bends,
beautiful,
willowy thing.
So there's one track in particular I really need to ask you about, which is Held in the Shadows. How did that come about?
Well, it was really about the two of us. I was trying to write a love song for Joe, and I wanted it to be a love song, but I wanted it to be a rock song as well. So it's a cathartic thing. It talks about the end of one way of life, and the beginning of a new one, and I felt that I had to keep silent about my relationship with Joe as we were getting closer and closer together, but I knew that my future was with her, and so at times I used to feel that that was a way of describing it when you're both holding yourselves back. I think it was a very difficult journey for Jo, who was often on her own, and it was a very long courtship, and I've been apologising to her for the rest of. I will be apologising to her for the rest of my life, and I'm saying the wrong thing again, but it's heartfelt because, you know, it's been really wonderful being married to Jo. She's fantastic,
Well,
she doesn't get enough praise.
I mean, it's more evident than it was, I think, about the strength of not just your personal relationship, but the songwriting partnership, and I think that wasn't necessarily as evident a few years ago.
Right.
And your book really brings out a lot of that. And the last couple of pages sort of emphasise where you guys are now, which is really, really special. And it struck me that this album in particular was very much a demonstration of that strength.
I would say it was, and its predecessor, of course, which was Under a Mediterranean Sky, which Jo came up with the concept of that, of acoustic music, which she said, you know, you don't need to just make an album of stuff that's based on Baroque music. It could be much wider. It could be world music influence, describing all those various countries around the Med. I know I'm off the subject here of Surrender or Silence, but I feel as though they're sort of twin things, because they were both done in lockdown, and within 2 weeks of each other, these things were, you know, just finished one, and then it was straight away onto Surrender or Silence, where we were onto the rock instruments and the social comment and all the things that could accompany that.
Well, listen, both of you, I can't thank you enough. A, for making me feel so welcome. B, for giving me so much of your time. You know, for me, speaking as a fan for a moment rather than an interviewer, I think what you guys do on social media, your accessibility and your contact, I think means a lot to your fan base, and may that long continue. So thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Been great.
This interview with Steve Hackett is brought to you by Make a Difference with Records. We are a vinyl charity store based in Godalming, and we support the Surrey mental health charity Catalyst. Look out for our other podcasts, and you can follow us on Instagram under Make a Difference with Records, or on Twitter at Vinyl for Charity.